We are going to be going over my official fall forecast for 2025, and I know I haven't been doing a video for the past 5 days, and I just wanted to take my time to make my fall forecast happen like this, so I apologize for the inconvenience right there that I might have not done a video for some time, but we are finally releasing my fall forecast for 2025, and make sure to stick till the end of it so that way you guys know, or at least have a good idea about what to expect as we head into fall this year. And we are, getting pretty close to fall already, so this is actually not a bad time to release it right now. And the first thing I want to start off with is going to be the probability of a La Nina, neutral phase, or an El Nino. So right now we are in a neutral phase, as you can see, since that's one of the highest bars. Neutral phase is gray, La Nina is blue, and El Nino is orange. Orange is red, and you guys can see that once we head into the fall months, especially September, October, and November, we start to see a pretty good chance of a La Nina. I probably wouldn't say a high chance, since the National Weather Service is only saying there's about a 50-50 chance, especially once we head into October, November, and as well as December. So this will be a time frame to watch very closely. And either way, I do think we will be seeing a pretty active fall this year, because even if we do stay in a neutral phase, we are still expecting a very active fall this year. And one of the reasons why is, once again, we are in that neutral phase, as you can see, with the mix between both above and below normal temperatures. So, we're not really talking about one or the other, but either way, we will definitely be seeing a pretty active fall overall. And one of the main reasons why I think this fall is going to be very active. Now, keep in mind that this is a neutral phase. So a neutral phase is kind of like a mix between both an El Nino and a La Nina, since we're seeing both warm and cold waters mixed. And so I kind of like to consider it El Nina, because of how we're seeing, once again, that mix between both of the water temperatures. And even if we do stay in a neutral phase, like I said, I do think that it will be a very similar, La Nina like fall, especially since we're still expecting that jet stream to be coming into play. And you guys can see that it is very similar to what we would see with a La Nina. So either way, I do think this jet stream is going to be heading from north to southeast, and possibly either heading up the east coast or just straight into the Atlantic Ocean. And one of the other things that we'll be watching for is the Pacific Jet. The Pacific Jet stream, here I'll go back so that way you guys can see, but there's very warm waters up there across California and even a little farther north in the eastern Pacific. And so this is one of the reasons why I think that Pacific jet stream is going to also be another one of our biggest players this year, which means storm systems will likely be coming off of the Pacific Ocean into the northwest, and then possibly continuing to the east. And then once the storm systems that came off the Pacific meet this jet stream, then, of course, those storm systems will continue. So something like that is what I expect this fall. And of course, we could even see that tropical jet stream even come into play too. Now, I don't want to say that's a guarantee, because that tropical jet stream isn't necessarily active as of right now. But if we do see this tropical jet stream come into play, it would bring wetter than normal precipitation to areas across the deep south and as well as the southeast. And it will also bring warmer and drier conditions over here in the southwest, since we don't see either jet stream meeting this area. So we will need to watch that very closely, as like I said, we are kind of going to be on the fence between either just staying in the neutral phase like how we are seeing right now, or we transition into a weak La Nina. And like I said, the best chances of that would be during the middle of fall. But right now, like I said, it's more like 50-50. So it's not really something that we can guarantee you that we'll see. But either way, like I said, I do think we will be seeing, more of a La Nina type setup. And like I said, a neutral phase seems to bring a very similar setup like what we would see with a La Nina. So definitely make sure you guys are ready for that. Now, let's look at our temperatures. Our temperatures is probably going to be one of the most noticeable things this fall, as we are expecting much of the western United States to be trending above normal in terms of our temperatures. And so we do expect there to be above normal temperatures heading from British Columbia all the way back down there into the southwest, including California, Arizona, and perhaps even as far east as New Mexico. And then I do think other parts of the deep south will be either near normal or even slightly above normal. So we definitely will need to keep an eye on that very closely, as I do think warmer than normal temperatures will be a big play for those areas. And then, of course, farther to the north, like I said, where we're going to see this jet stream come into play, I think it's going to be something kind of like this. I'm not saying that it will be like that, but like I said, this is kind of what we're thinking, given the fact that we're still going to kind of once again be on that edge between either seeing a La Nina or even just staying in this neutral phase. So I do expect this jet stream to be kind of like this, like I said, which brings warmer than normal temperatures to areas in the south and cooler than normal temperatures to those areas in the north. So that is kind of what we're expecting as we head into the fall time. And this even includes the Ohio Valley and even parts there of the Great Lakes. So make sure you guys are really watching that very closely, as I do think some areas might even be seeing a little bit of a cooler than normal fall this year. I'm not saying that we're going to be seeing every single day be cooler than normal, but overall, it is expected to be a little bit below normal across these areas once again. And like I said, that doesn't mean every day will, but it's definitely something that we definitely will need to watch very closely, as frequent cold shots will be possible, which would be like once or two times a week, something like that. Now, let's take a look at our precipitation. Precipitation is also going to be another little bit of a different thing this fall, especially since areas over there in the southwest are going to be trending a little bit below normal in terms of precipitation this fall. And we will also be looking at above normal precipitation across three areas, one across the East Coast. This is mainly due to those tropical systems that we could see as we get into fall. And we could also be talking about above normal precipitation across areas of the Ohio Valley and even another area over there across the Pacific Northwest. So this will be something once again to really keep an eye on closely, especially because this jet stream is likely going to be going over those areas several times this fall, possibly leading to some big time above normal rainfall across those areas. And that's why I have that second shade of green showing up. And same across the Pacific Northwest. I think this jet stream is just going to be to the east of the Pacific Northwest. But like I said, we're also going to kind of have that jet stream coming off of the Pacific Ocean. And like I said, that does have the potential to bring some big time storm systems. And then after they move across the Pacific Northwest, they're then going to cut on into this jet stream. And then they'll, continue to ride this jet stream all the way over there towards the East Coast. And like I said, this is kind of what we're expecting in terms of precipitation. So we will definitely need to keep an eye on the precipitation closely, as I do think even areas down there in the deep south could also be trending a little bit above normal this fall too. So make sure you guys are ready for that, especially the tropics. Now, let's also look at our severe weather risk, or at least the forecasts for severe storms this fall. Now, I'm not saying that this is exactly how it's going to play out this fall, but this is mainly showing you guys what areas could be at risk for seeing severe storms this fall. And this is me going over the past fall severe weather seasons whenever we've seen a weak La Nina, and this is once again kind of adding all those fall seasons together, or at least the severe weather that we've seen during those falls, and turning it into an average forecast. And usually when we get a weak La Nina, and like I said, I was looking at the past years that we've seen a weak La Nina and seeing how those severe weather seasons played out, you guys can see that it's especially these areas from the deep south all the way up there into the lower Ohio Valley that really sees, a lot of the severe weather. And one of those examples, I don't know if this year really did see a weak La Nina or not, but back in 2021, of course, most people probably remember remember how we saw that EF4 tornado tear through parts there of Kentucky, and that was with a La Nina. Like I said, I'm not sure if it was a weak, strong, or even a moderate La Nina, but either way, a La Nina does tend to bring a little bit more in the way of an active severe weather season to those areas. And like I said, even if we do stay in a neutral phase this year, I do think that jet stream is going to be just as powerful, bringing severe weather potential to these areas, once again, from the lower Ohio Valley all the way down there into the deep south. And so this is something that we're going to watch for, especially in this purple color, which the chances of severe weather in this purple color are high, chances of severe weather in this brown color are likely, and the chances of severe weather in this, more red color are possible. So even if you live in this red color, you should still be, keeping an eye on the weather closely, as there could be a few times this fall that we do see severe storms, maybe even as far east as the East Coast once again. Now, like I said, I don't know if this is exactly how it's going to play out, but like I said, it is something that we're going to watch for, as I do think this fall is going to be very active, especially for how the jet stream is going to be setting up. Now, let's go over my official fall forecast, or at least my overall forecast for 2025. And this is probably what you guys have especially been waiting for. And like I said, I've been taking a lot of time to make this, and so that's why I haven't been doing a video over the past couple of days. But anyway, we are looking at warm and wet conditions across the Pacific Northwest, as you guys can see, especially in this orange color, which is over, of course, the Pacific Northwest, like I said, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. So make sure you guys are ready for that, as I do think that Pacific jet stream, once again, is going to be pretty active. And so definitely expect there to be some pretty big storms coming on to you guys, likely leading to above normal precipitation as well. So I definitely would be weather aware if I was up there. And then areas just to the south of that for this fall, once again, this is just overall. We are expecting dry and hot conditions down here in the southwest. I know you guys probably want that heat to go away, especially since you guys have already been dealing with record-breaking heat waves this year. But unfortunately, I do still think it will continue, and for how hot and dry it's expected to be, I do even think there will be an increased wildfire risk over here across the southwest, especially Arizona, California, Nevada, Utah, and even over there into New Mexico. So I definitely would recommend you guys continue to stay prepared for those wildfires, and make sure you guys are also still ready for those drier and hot conditions too. So like I said, I know that seems a little bit unfortunate, but that does look to continue as we head throughout the fall. And then for this white color, we are expecting fall snow in the higher elevations. Lower elevations will probably see a little bit of snow at times, but it's more so the higher elevations in that white color that will likely be seeing some snowfall as we head throughout the fall months. Now, we're not like saying that this is going to be, above normal snowfall this fall, which, depending on where you are, you may be seeing a lot of snowfall this fall, especially in the higher elevations, like I said. But I do think, once again, we're just going to be seeing regular fall snow in that area. So make sure you guys are prepared for that, and you guys probably even know what to do, since you guys usually see snowfall a little bit earlier than the others. In this green color, we are expecting there to be mild conditions overall this fall, like I said, as I do think areas down here in the Southern Plains, and even over here towards areas of the just to the west there of the Deep South. So Southern Plains and just to the west of the Deep South is likely going to be seen, once again, a mild winter. And this is mainly given the fact that, we could be talking about, some slightly above normal temperatures, which will keep the temperatures pleasant in this area. But at the same time, we could also be talking about either that polar jet stream maybe dipping far down south enough to where there could be a few storms, or we even see that tropical jet stream coming into play, which, like I said, if that does come into play, it might, bring a little bit of a different story this fall. But for right now, I do think, it's mainly going to be that poor jet stream to watch for, which could potentially bring a few storms, especially as we get into the later part of fall, where I do think that jet stream is going to be going far down south enough to where it could even bring some, storm systems, like I said. And then, of course, tropics is also another thing to watch for. And like I said, that could even, include a few storms here and there, especially if we do see a hurricane or even a tropical storm impact this area in the Southern Plains. So make sure you guys are keeping an eye on that very closely. Once we head a little bit farther east, we are expecting there to be active tropics early, as you guys probably already know. So make sure you guys are continuing to stay prepared for that. But then once I think we get into the later part of fall, this is when I am expecting there to be the potential, at least, for a return of some severe storms. So we are going to be watching this area very closely once again, especially since that jet stream, like I said, will likely be coming into play something like this. Like I said, it's not like a guarantee that we'll see the jet stream this way, but like I said, I do think, or with what we're seeing right now, I do think this area down here in the deep south could be talking about some severe storms late. Same in this red color, but I do think it will be a little bit more active in terms of severe storms in this red color, especially since, once again, we're going to be dealing with that colder air and as well as that warmer air. So I do think this area, once again, is going to be the area to watch for, especially if you compare the years that we've seen a weak La Nina during the fall time. And like I said, most of those, fall, seasons that we've seen a weak La Nina have been pretty active across this area, especially because, like I said, a weak La Nina usually tends to bring some pretty active severe storms to areas across the lower Ohio Valley and as well as the deep south. So from how things are looking, I do think it will be very similar this year, so make sure you guys are ready for that. Now, I'm not like saying we're going to see severe storms every single day, and once again, this is just an overall fall forecast, but I do think there could be a few times where we do see, once again, some severe storms, so make sure you guys are watching there. And then farther to the north, cold with storms, maybe even some early snowfall this year. We're not like saying that it will, happen early this year, but I do think, with how much cold air that's going to be around and with that jet stream still tracking over some of these areas shaded in that blue, there is still going to be that potential that some of these areas might see, some early snowfall once again, especially across the northern plains, upper Midwest, and even the Great Lakes region. Areas farther down to the south, however, I do think you guys will still be dealing with some storms and perhaps even some cold conditions, but I don't think it's going to get cold enough for there to be any early snowfall this year, especially over there in Kansas, Missouri, and Colorado. But like I said, you guys who do live farther to the north will at least have that potential, so I do think we will need to watch it very closely as we are still expecting a little bit of a colder than normal fall. And then the last area is the Northeast and as well as the Mid-Atlantic, where we are expecting kind of a wild card this year. The reason why I think that area is going to be a wild card this year is mainly given the fact that, one of the things that we could see on the East Coast, and you guys probably even noticed this already, is maybe some tropical systems kind of making their way along the East Coast or even developing off the East Coast, which could bring some stormy weather to this area. There could be a few times where we see some drier, colder air surge on into this area, which would bring, not only cold conditions, but also dry conditions to the Northeast. So that will be another thing to watch for. Another thing that I think could be possible this year is that I do think in the fall, like I said, there could even be some severe storms that impact this area. Now, like I said, the main corridor would especially be over here by the lower Ohio Valley. But, you guys are still kind of in that possible zone in terms of severe weather. So I do think there could be a time or two where severe storms continue from the lower Ohio Valley all the way up here into the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. So I do think that is also another possibility this year. And as you guys probably know, like I said, with everything that I just told you guys, anything is really possible in this light shaded blue color, including tropics, maybe some severe storms at times, or there will likely be a couple couple times where we even trend drier than normal. So kind of all over the place for this area once again, but I definitely still want you guys to be ready for it. And during the times that we do see those storms, they could definitely pack a big punch. So make sure you guys over here in the Northeast are definitely prepared for that, as I do think it will be a pretty crazy fall overall. But thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed today's fall forecast. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, as we'll even be releasing our preliminary winter forecast pretty soon. We'll probably release it once we head into September, so it's still going to be a little bit, but I definitely will be working on it. So make sure you guys are subscribed and turn on all notifications so that way you guys don't miss out on any more long range forecasts that we do. And once again, whenever I'm making these long range forecasts, there will probably be a time or two where I'm not doing a video for like 7 days. But like I said, that doesn't mean I won't keep you guys up to date. That just means, I'm going to be using my time to make this. Like I said, consider subscribing for these long range forecasts, as it's even took a lot of time and work to do. And I hope you guys have a good fall out there once it starts. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Thank you all so much for watching, and goodbye.